Don't need you to secretary.
All right, welcome to Sherwood City Council work session for June 7th, 2022. Sylvia will make note of who's all here. And we have 3 items to talk about. First is Sherwood West Book Project update.
Great. So I'm Erica Palmer, Planning Manager. Good to see you everyone this evening. I think the last time I was here talking about Sherwood West was early last fall. So this is a good time to have a little refresher about the work that our CAC, our Community Advisory Committee, and our Technical Advisory Committee, what they've been working on as we move into a public engagement activity this summer as we get towards our draft scenario for this work. So with that, our meeting purpose tonight, I'm going to do a little refresh on why we're doing this relook, what we've done to date, and next steps and timeline. So as you know, the original preliminary concept plan was adopted in 2016. It was adopted prior to our comprehensive plan update, which really sets the goals and visions for the community over the next 20+ years. It primarily focused on housing. Didn't really talk a lot about economic development. And as you know, that is the new kind of goal for the city. We want a good balance of housing to jobs in Sherwood. And when it was adopted in 2016, we didn't have House Bill 2001. So there's some other regulations at play that we're kind of looking at in addition to updated transportation plans as well. So again, we have new opportunities for employment and economic growth in Sherwood. There's new land use growth patterns in Sherwood West. We have the biggest high school in Oregon, now located off Elbert, and new state housing goals related to housing and transportation. So with that, a little recap around Sherwood West. The total area is just over 1,200 acres. There's 110 property owners with 126 properties. When we started this process, we sent each property owner a letter telling them about this project, how they could get involved, where information can be found. And I've had many conversations with those property owners within the past 10 months. So where we are at in the process. So we received a grant in 2021 to do this work from Metro. We formed a technical advisory committee and a community advisory committee. The community advisory committee is made up of folks, from within the Sherwood city boundary and also folks in Sherwood West. We just had our 8th meeting. We're headed into our 9th meeting next week. And we are in the process of developing our land use scenario maps and implementation tools so we can take that out to the community for an engagement activity this summer. And then finally, we anticipate this project being wrapped up hopefully by the end of this year.
22, not 21.
22, thank you.
I thought we were way behind, or?
We're done.
No, we're done. One like that. So here is the Sherwood West vision. We added some language to the vision that was in the 2016 plan. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but we really want to make Sherwood West, a family-oriented place that's safe where families can live, work, and play. We want to make sure that the infrastructure is planned well, that the streets are well connected. We have walkable neighborhoods. We have expanded our tax base here in Sherwood by providing, higher wage jobs. And of course, we want to take advantage of our network of natural trails and parks and open space that Sherwood West provides. So we have 6 theme concepts in this area. We have mixed employment, great neighborhoods, livable and connected streets. I'll talk about the Southeast Elbert road design concept, active transportation, and my favorite, the Chicken Creek Greenway. But first, let's talk about employment. So we are talking about mixed employment in Sherwood West, and we want really the right kind of jobs in the right place. When we started this work, we reached out to over 30+ stakeholders who do work in economic development. We reached out to folks that build office campuses, folks in the healthcare industry, those folks who are in wine-related businesses around this area, to really get a sense of what would work. And I want to tell you that everybody that we talked to is really enthusiastic about Sherwood West and the opportunities that it could provide for jobs. And so with that, the employment uses that that we're looking at are those, high tech jobs, clean tech, flex uses, smaller commercial, retail. We want to make sure that we have plenty of different mixes of employment in this area. So this map right here kind of shows the areas that we're looking at for these mixed employment areas. We have the northern area that is, about Shoals Sherwood Road and Roy Rogers. That area is really flat, and there's great opportunities there for a large campus, park or multi-tenant space, such as a tech park. Moving down south, we had a little 6-acre node, but our CAC, they weren't too keen on that, so we've actually kind of taken that out of the mix. And then down a little further towards Kruger and Highway 99, we see more land available for flex space uses like industrial, like manufacturing, as healthcare and wine related uses as well.
Hospitality.
Hospitality. So moving on to our great neighborhoods, if you have a great job in Sherwood, you want a great place to live, right? So we plan on making some great neighborhoods. We're planning for walkability. We need to provide for a variety of housing. And of course, we talk about how we need to integrate the new neighborhoods with the existing neighborhoods in Sherwood and what that will look like. And I'm going to talk about trails here too in a minute. We want to plan for parks in these new neighborhoods and make sure that they're connected to green spaces and nature. So when we talk about different types of housing in Sherwood West and what we should be providing, single family, detached townhomes, single family detached with ADUs. And we've talked about cottage clusters and different kinds of plexes. Now going back all the way to the comprehensive plan work that we did a couple years back now, we know that the community really desires cottage clusters and townhomes out of that kind of missing middle span of housing. Those are the two that has bubbled up from the community of what they prefer out of those types. So moving on to livable and connected streets. This is kind of showing a street network here. At the north end, we want to make sure that the street network is really, designed safely for, big trucks or employment uses. We definitely want to design our streets for safety. We definitely want to connect all areas of Sherwood West. And at your next work session on June 21st, we're actually going to be talking about some alternatives for some crossings between Brookman and Sherwood West. So that's coming up. So keep that thought in your brain for the next couple of weeks. And we also want to provide, options for all modes of travel. What we've heard from the CDC and the community is that they prefer the rerouting of the Elbert with the 2 roundabouts. And that was an option in the first preliminary plan back in 2016. And as we move forward, that's kind of, again, that's bubbled up as being, the preferred option for the transportation network is that rerouting.
Why is that?
What was that?
Why?
It'll help, slow down traffic so Elbert isn't, straight. It enhances safety.
Okay.
And we also have heard from the
And
CAC.
is it safe to say that the cost
Yes,
is similar?
yes, the cost of rerouting Elbert and doing
Yeah.
the improvements of the floodplain area, it's actually cheaper to do the roundabouts than mitigating for the wetlands at Elbert.
And
Kind
we,
of that.
and have we started having conversations yet with our county partners, since it's a county road,
Yes, they are involved in our technical advisory committee.
and they're not saying no at this point?
They're not saying no, and I have done a little more research and have reached out to our partners at like Department of State Lands to talk about, the wetlands and additional mitigation that would need to happen when we get into designing the road.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
And another conversation we're having, and I apologize if you were getting this, but the dark dotted line is just a crayon mark as Bob would call it, but we want to find ways to cut through traffic to the outside of that and unload traffic off of Delaware. Long term.
Yeah.
bigger the grid and blah, 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 the better.
Yeah.
Connections, connections, connections.
I lived in a city for a while that was all traffic circles everywhere, and it was such a joy. It was, yeah.
Didn't get
because-
dizzy?
No, because when you come down Elward, sometimes that's backed up. When I used to commute that way, it'd be backed up just because everybody's doing
Hard stop. at the
yeah,
intersection.
well, even a halfway stop would cause it to back up, even if they're rolling kind of through it. So anyway,
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
So our Southeast Elbert Road design concepts. So when you think of great streets here in Sherwood, I often hear people, we want sunset, we like sunset, we love the design elements on sunset. So we have taken that approach of how we can take those design elements that are along Sunset and integrate them, crossing the street or crossing Highway 99 up Elbert. So we are looking at, increasing, the tree canopy, making sure that we have planted medians, a consistent fence line, making sure that the multi-use path is extended all the way up Elbert for folks to walk and ride their bicycles, and just making sure that, it's a nice green landscaped corridor. And so in that sense, when we talk about Elbert, we want to make sure that we're designing it, in a way that's distinctive for the road. There's going to be little nodes along the way. So of course we have the high school, the edge, it's really the gateway. Then we move into, kind of the residential boulevard and treatment where we extend that multi-use path, up along, residential neighborhoods. We have some green crossings over Chicken Creek. We want to make sure that those crossings are designed in an environmental manner. Maybe we can provide some artwork and public views for those crossings. And then in the employment area, like I was saying, we want to make sure that we are limiting curb cuts, but making sure that trucks have, the right turning radiuses. Make sure that we have a nice visual corridor along that area too, and make it a nice little employment parkway, as I like to call it. So active transportation. So just imagine yourself at the YMCA. You're on your bike, you cross the new pedestrian bridge onto Elbert.
I crash.
But it's safe because you're not going to get hit by a car.
Wow.
You cross that new pedestrian bridge, you're at the high school, you're on a new multi-use path. You take that path all the way up to the new Chicken Creek Corridor Trail. You head east on that new Chicken Creek Corridor Trail all the way to the refuge.
Whoa.
Or you can circle back to the Cedar Creek Trail. So it provides this awesome loop. And with that, I want to move to Sherwood West. So we are really wanting to provide all modes of, transportation, and making sure that we have key connections to really interesting places, your destinations, your schools, your parks, your employment.
Can we jump back real quick? Because I just want to, one of the things that we talked about that I really liked was, you'll notice in Chicken Creek, trails on both sides, the housing on both sides.
And on this map, you see all those little green spaces, so those are proposed like little, neighborhood parks as well. So the Chicken Creek and Greenway, as you know, Chicken Creek, crosses through Sherwood West, and it's a green asset for the community. We are planning a trail system on both sides of the riparian corridor through there that can provide access to nature, stormwater management, multi-use paths, and it could really provide a buffer, between neighborhoods.
I must say, I have never heard Goose Creek. I'm embarrassed.
Yes.
That we have a Goose Creek. I mean, I've been around a couple of years, like Goose Creek. All right, cool.
Is there water in Goose Creek, or is it just name only?
When I drive by, it looks like blackberry bushes, but.
All right.
So it's more of a seasonal thing.
Back underground.
Popular with the kids. Blackberry.
So some of our assumptions and scenario planning as we move forward. We did, and I just want to note that these numbers are a little in flux at the moment as we start to work with as we have been working with the CAC. This BLI table hasn't been updated. It needs to be updated because we have just added more employment land back to the mix. But we did a little buildable land exercise to get to the net buildable residential land supply for Sherwood West. And it comes out, it's gonna be it'll probably be roughly around 325 or less. So the estimate of total open space in Sherwood West right now, when you take out all of the resource lands in Sherwood West, so the riparian areas, the wetlands, the steep slopes, when we take out the areas that are needed for parks, and the natural gas line easement that runs through Sherwood West, we're looking at almost 40% open space. And then I need to say it would actually be more open space because as you develop neighborhoods, we have an open space policy that requires even more open space. So it's gonna be a nice green development.
Yeah, and that's why it's always been, it's like, hey, it's not that much developable dirt out there.
So things that we are keeping in the back of our minds right now at the CAC committee is we need a plan for a community park. So we're looking at potential options of where a community park could be located. And then we're also looking at, where a new middle school could be located as well. We talked to the school districts, and right now they agree that they probably have 10 years of growth in Sherwood before they would need a new school. So they have existing capacity.
But they were also, when they were thinking about growth, they're thinking about everything that's already in the city limits as well.
Right.
Yeah, no schools, no parks in job country.
So when we talk
Because because it was like 175 acres of employment land?
This is coming up tomorrow in tomorrow's packet, but the newly updated BLI is roughly around 250 acres
That's a much better number, thank you.
of employment. So we've added some employment back to the mix.
Much better number. Good work.
I mainly just, are there gonna be lunch places right by the high school? It feels like we need with all those students that are leaving lunch to go get lunch in Dutch Bros, do we just have some?
There's that whole
Oh,
side
that's
of
on the
the school.
south part of it. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Oh, okay.
There's target rich environment across the street.
I know, I'm just making sure we're not.
The committee didn't think it was feasible to have it on both sides, north and
Okay.
south, so.
Yeah, well-
Taylor, there's a
north and south.
cafeteria at the high school.
There is, and I keep telling my kids that. But if I can just cut the traffic down of everybody leaving.
If it's not a closed campus, they can,
I know, but I'd rather them, if they're leaving the campus, I'd rather them walk across the street to Dutch Bros than drive a mile to Dutch Bros.
At that age, I'd drive 100 yards, it's fun.
Yeah.
You could see the whole high school from my house and my daughter drove to school.
Yeah, that's true. All right. I withdraw.
So over the past couple months with the CAC, we've been talking about our residential land use designations and kind of our housing metrics in Sherwood West. I don't want to give too much away tonight, but the packet goes out tomorrow online, so you can read
Okay.
more information there. But we are looking at, multifamily. I think we're being pretty innovative, and we are looking at creating maybe a cottage cluster zone just for cottage clusters.
it's the only way you're gonna get them.
And that would not be subject to the OAR 660, which is middle housing. And the same goes if we create a middle housing zone that's just specific to middle housing types, that is not subject to the Oregon administrative rule for middle housing. And then we're kind of looking at different metrics for neighborhood high, medium, and low, which are based on our current zoning designations here in Sherwood. So
Right.
medium is,
So literally, all it's saying is designated lot sizes.
yes,
So that's all medium, high, medium, low anymore says minimum lot size,
exactly.
X, Y, Z.
Yep.
And then what they do on that lot is up to them.
But the key thing to remember is if the zone allows for single family detached under HB 2001,
Put whatever
they
they
can
want.
basically do whatever they want. But if we have a zone that's cottage cluster only, or even duplex only, or
Yes.
triplex only, they can't do whatever they want. So it's a tool for us to manage that a little closer.
Mhm.
Whose idea was that?
I'm sorry?
Whose idea was that?
Probably yours.
It was.
So what we've heard so far.
You're welcome, it was mine 2 years ago, but
So we've definitely heard that there is strong support for additional employment uses in Sherwood West, especially along the northern portion between Shoals, Sherwood, and
anywhere that it's sort of flat,
anywhere where it's flat, yes.
sort of flat.
Sort of flat.
Is
There,
that appropriate, Bruce? Sort of flat?
Perfect.
Counselor Giles, there's support for neighborhood services and mixed-use development just south of the high school. So, folks would be able to, walk somewhere else and get lunch if that's.
Okay.
they
I also
desire.
don't want too far to drive if I'm in that employment park.
Well, you can just hop on your bike because there'll be a
Okay,
multi-use path.
perfect. I love it.
That motorized bike.
All right. Electric.
And then there's more support for additional employment along Highway 99 than there was in the original concept plan. So we just want to make sure that we have a balance of uses. There's continued support for open spaces and connections to trails.
And
The north-south.
this may be a question for you. I'm not sure if it's a Bruce question but how do we, you said good paying jobs are essentially, how do we attract, is it just the type of zoning that we do for that flat land that gets the higher paying jobs there, or?
So it's all about the zoning, so you create a new industrials type zone.
You have some kind of industrial zoning.
But is industrial zoning high?
I call it tech park, but that's just.
Yeah, so, but tech park though sounds like good paying jobs.
Yes.
Warehousing
Right.
sounds like not very good paying.
I mean, my guess is, talking to brokers, is we've done a lot of tours out there, is that it's too far from freeway to have big box warehouses.
Okay,
It's okay, I mean, I think that's okay,
Okay.
from my point of view. I mean, they generally want to be as close to a freeway as possible. I mean, you
Yeah.
can get some internal distribution within, for this for the area that goes maybe up to Beaverton. But I'm hoping that the zoning is really encouraging of suppliers or
Parts.
semiconductor. I
Okay,
mean,
perfect.
the market's somewhat gonna tell.
Yeah.
You know, but I think that's a good location for what.
Oh, yeah, I know me and thousands of other nerds drove up to Hillsborough and Beaverton along that road for many years, and I'm looking at them all going, I wish these were all here. You know, 'cause-
Right. Plus, you get, 17,000 housing north of Sherwood along Roy Rogers.
yeah, coming the other way, come down to us for lunch, yeah. I love it. Yeah.
And there's, you know, there's tweaking we can do with the zoning to encourage it, but even past zoning, we could get creative and do incentive programs. There's all kinds of stuff.
Okay, great. I just,
Yeah.
yeah, again, I want to make sure we're getting,
And we have Bruce.
Very
So-
deliberate.
yep, love it.
I said, and we have Bruce.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Awesome, thank you.
And then that north-south road, from, Chapman to Edie, we're gonna be moving forward with, 2 alternatives for the public to view. But we've heard from neighbors in the Eastview Neighborhood Association that are kind of opposed to that connection utilizing their road, which is Eastview Road. So we've been,
Which we probably wouldn't utilize anyways because of the grades, but.
great.
Yep.
So next up here, so
Haven't driven it.
our next meeting is with the CAC next week. We plan to have a little land use scenario exercise with them. They're gonna be learning kind of more about our outputs for our housing metrics as well. And then we plan to take, a couple alternatives out to the public this summer to seek additional input and guidance from the community. Once we have selected a preferred land use scenario, then we're gonna be looking at some additional analysis. We're gonna be looking at transportation and infrastructure funding and phasing. I should have included that as well. Community engagement has been happening at every step in the way. We have an interested parties list that has grown to almost 200 emails. I've been talking to folks on a regular basis. I even had a coffee clatch here just a couple weeks ago with the folks from the with some folks that live in the Mandel Farm subdivision. They were really excited, came out, that was a great positive meeting. Lots of questions and they felt like they were heard and everything was satisfied. And then, like I said, we hope to have a complete plan by the end of this year. So with that, I have 1 minute to spare if you have any questions.
And
You
the,
good?
and the community outreach that goes out this week or next week, you said? Next week.
So our CAC meeting is next Wednesday, and then we're gonna be talking about community outreach and what we.
Is there gonna be any mention whatsoever of UDD ask? Good,
No,
Yeah.
right answer.
because we wanna keep, that's a separate process.
Exactly. But our consultant wasn't thinking about it that way for a long time,
Well,
so that's been fixed.
It's a separate process.
Thank you.
Awesome. Looks like you're making great strides.
If I could just add on to that, I just want to compliment staff and Jean and the committee members, because we are blazing new territory here. This is not a traditional concept plan look. House Bill 2001 completely upset the basket in terms of how you view densities and talk about how everything gets laid out. So we're doing things I don't think anyone else has done yet.
Yeah, and I just wanna
It's been a
echo that we've had many conversations with, agency partners at the state, PLC, and also Metro about kind of the in and outs of,
And what's their
how
fee?
far can we kind of push the envelope
Okay.
on certain things.
But even some of those groups are confused that, even our consultants got into a little bit of just, this is checkbox, this is how we've always done it, but
Yep.
it's a different world with HB.
You're working for Sherwood now, no?
And the park that you're looking for in Sherwood West is in addition to the Greenway and the paths and all of that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, maybe if we give them that, they'll let us have wider streets.
Pigs will fly first. Awesome, great job. Thank you very much.
Listen to me talk for a few years.
All right, now moving on to little intro on a potential public works facility master plan.
So, this is Brendan Dole with Scott Edwards Architect. I did send an email out. It was late today. Sorry about that. That was my fault. Kind of going back a little bit before we get started, this actual project we've been working and talking about since probably about 2005, 2006. We worked on some stuff in 2019, some space planning. Not really, we didn't get too far into it, but we've pretty much done a feasibility on this. Counselor Young was part of the team every 2 weeks that met. There's a lot of stuff that went on before we met. Counselor Young was in that meeting, but a lot of works went into this. It's good to see some real numbers. And like I said, I laid some stuff out in the email, and some of you maybe you didn't get to see it because it was late in the day, but really just want to show you where we're at. I don't want you to get scared of the number because, as I said in the email, this is no different than we did the water project. There's risk mitigations here. You got a brownfield site. We want to plan for that. We want a budget contingency in there because we're really early in the phase. It's got quite a bit of contingency built into this number. And in the end, Brandon will talk about Wilsonville's actually building a facility. Their bids are coming in here at the end of this month, I believe. And they're expecting that facility to be at 19 million just for construction. So I don't want you to get scared of the numbers as we talk about this, but it's kind of eye-opening when you look at it. There's some stuff that's not included in here. That's all in your email that I sent you. More than happy to answer any questions after we go through that because it was my fault not getting the stuff to you earlier this morning as I planned on doing. So we'll move forward. Go ahead.
You were waiting on me.
Well, we were waiting on both and then
All right, it's both your faults. Whatever.
it's on me though.
Oh, well.
Well, I think this is a great piggyback because we just talked about 100 plus households, right? And so how that, just 100 plus. So, I think the need is there for the Public Works Operations group. But thank you for having me here today. I've had the pleasure to work with Craig and the group for about 6 months now looking at this. So today we want to give you a little bit of intro and project background. We want to talk about the development site itself. We know some of you are familiar with it, but we have some high level stuff we want you to understand. Development concept plan. So what we've been doing in terms of evaluating the site for feasibility. Going to show you today that it does indeed fit. The public works program will fit on this site and is a viable development. And then look at some development costs and then talk next steps, schedule if we can, and Q&A.
Is the neighbor, Bruce, is the neighbor moving ahead to develop?
Yeah, the neighbor is.
We don't need to know the names, but.
No, it's okay. He's gonna develop the back portion and they're creating the parcel in the front, 2 acres in front for another company to be determined. It's gonna be for sale.
So for reference, this view, this is the current public works facility, and we're going to be looking at this parcel out here with that nice little waterway. So what have we really been doing over the last 6 months, 5-6 months? Well, like Craig mentioned, our group in 2019 came in and provided you a pretty high level space program, looked at some of the evaluation done on the development site and said, here's kind of a high level concept plan. I think you should progress forward with this site. So we've come in, we reviewed it, and we've updated that 2019 work. The effort to do that includes what we call a day in the life of public works. So myself and my team spent a lot of time with the group. I spent a whole day out there observing the group in their morning efforts and afternoon efforts. We've conducted multiple work sessions with the project team, which includes Craig and Rich and multiple other just advisors from the staff. Like Craig mentioned, Kim's been on that group. We toured different facilities. So in 2019, we went out and looked at, I think we looked at Tualatin, probably Hillsborough, probably Clean Water Services. So this go around, we wanted to look at something a little bit different. Oregon City's Public Works just came on board in November, December, if you will. They moved in. So brand new facility, an adaptive reuse, not quite apples to apples, and we'll talk about that, but a pretty good look at what a new public works facility could be. And then we also, like Craig mentioned, City of Wilsonville, our group has been working with them for about 2.5 years. They did a shovel-ready project. It's 100% construction documents. We took it through land use, then they shelved it. Went back to council, got approval for the funding, and now we've actually, we're in for permit and bidding. So as Craig mentioned, we've shortlisted 3 different contractors and we'll have like a true market look by the end of the month. They're bidding the exact same project out, if you will. And then we did a small development site visit, really mainly our design team. We've met with CD, we've met with engineering, we've looked at, just land use compatibility, and I think we have an agreement that there is a path forward, and we've helped Craig outline some of that regulatory process. What are some of the regulations and code requirements that we're gonna have to meet? We've met with the Oregon Street project team, so the regional stormwater facility project going along Oregon Street. And we've gotten some actual schedule alignment. It just kind of worked out to where they're at in their process and where we're currently at. We actually can see the projects aligned to help each other out. Can get into more of that detail, but we do see some good alignment with that project. And then on top of that, we've produced some concept plans based on the updated program. Again, confirming that the site will accommodate the program, and we'll show you those conceptual plans with the estimated project budget.
I apologize if you've already done this with the whole council. Can you give me one sentence as to why we're looking for a new building?
Because you are outgrowing your current facility, you have multi-uses on that one.
Because the number of people that we have in that department are too many to fit in that building.
And even
Pieces
your
of equipment.
Equipment and everything else.
equipment,
Okay, all right.
storage, the way you
Perfect.
service your vehicles,
All right.
all of that, yeah.
You notice all the Jeeps in this parking lot?
Yeah, and could I just add one quick thing to that too? There's a bigger picture here too, because where we're putting the facility, the land there, because of all the issues that you were talking about with brownfield, is really tough to develop. It costs a lot of money for anyone else to do anything.
So
there.
we could redevelop.
The land we're
Yeah.
recovering
Prime.
is prime
Yeah.
redevelopable land, so
Yeah.
there's a
Perfect.
trade-off there as well.
Yep, I just didn't want it to be, they were looking for a shiny building. So,
I mean, if the county controls the property on Oregon. They want a local jurisdiction to clean it up, but if we cleaned it up, we could not sell it. We have to keep it. And so we have to put something on it.
okay,
Get it for free.
Great.
Well,
Beyond the cleanup.
if we get, we will spend more cleaning it up than the land if it was not contaminated is worth. But with some luck, maybe the feds will give us some money.
Okay.
Craig, did you take a note? He said the building can't be shiny.
I know, if you look at our building now, it's about 1972.
There go the gold hinges.
We're not talking shiny.
No. Again, if I was just a regular citizen, I
Ask me why.
know theoretically that Public Works takes care of, all these different things, but it's like, well, it's been working for so long, why do we need something new? So that's all, but frankly, I'm satisfied with the answers as is. I don't.
But you
Yeah.
bring up a great point that we need to do some messaging to the community
Yeah.
about the whys and stuff like that.
I mean, because frankly, even if you were to say, hey, we have to do this because of the parks and the growth and all of the other stuff, and here are the other benefits that you just mentioned with the land value and stuff, it feels like there's a good PR campaign there.
The other thing that we like to add that we always try to message is we view Public Works as an essential facility. Technically, they're not, right? Code-wise, structural code, that you don't have to treat them as when you develop a building.
Right, and we don't get development fees to put it up.
But we think
Unfortunately.
there's a fallacy there, that you actually should treat them as an essential facility. The numbers kind of talk to that, we'll get into that. We always say that, in the event of a major disaster, these guys are out clearing the roads for the essential service providers to come and provide those services. So it's.
I frankly did not know, do we have a snowplow?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and this is actually,
I wouldn't have used that picture, but,
I mean, it's a clamp on the front of it.
okay.
yeah, we
Yeah.
use that vehicle for other things too.
All right,
This doesn't-
all right.
But we actually did a resiliency plan, and this facility fails that we're currently in.
So-
Any kind of
Yeah, frankly, every person that I talk to talks about the parks and the trails and all that. And so if you just tie these together and you say, hey, this is part of the cost for why you love living in Sherwood, it feels like a very easy sell. So I don't want to
No, it's
derail
great. It's great.
too much, but I'm just, yeah.
And, right, and so there's the whole financing piece. I mean, in theory, you could ask voters to pay for this, but hopefully we won't have to, but who knows?
Yeah.
So,
And if anybody wants to come down and do a tour of the current facility, I encourage it, just come on set it up through Keith, through me, and we'll get you in the facility and look at it, what we're talking about.
So I get to drive the snowplow?
Unless you got proper license. No, but as somebody to walk through the facility to see what we're talking about.
That'd be great. All right.
No
Yeah,
problem.
hey, Craig, that's my question I have for you. Is how many citizens do you think even come to the public works on a monthly basis? I mean, some people probably come in to pay bills, right, or something, but other than that, how many visitors do you think you get?
Not too many visitors. It's more, before the pandemic, we had meetings there, other agencies would show up. Not too many citizens. We have quite a few people that still pay their utility bill at the front counter, believe it or not, but that's
Well,
what,
and that's kind of where I was headed with this too, is, I've been in the building a few times and it's dated, is a nice way of saying it.
It was David when he bought it.
Yeah, right. But I think, there's two approaches I'm going with here. Is first of all, a nice new building is for our public works is more functional, but it's also just a better look for our city. I think
shiny.
overall is to have a nice looking building. But also I think the flip side of it, and a little bit maybe what Taylor was getting at is, and the reason for my question is how many people actually have no idea even what our public works building looks like. And so when we're getting into the messaging of why we need a new building, is we may have to explain in market, I'll let you all handle the marketing fancy words, but that there is clearly a need for a new building too. Because I think a lot of people won't know that there might be a need for a new public works building. Because
The expanded yard this year is a clear indicator that we have issues. And
yeah, I just think, to Taylor's question is, people are going to ask, why do you need a new building? A lot of people have no idea why we're certainly going to need to do it in a way that doesn't, disparage the building too much, but explains that there is clearly a need for it.
Well, one of the reasons the community doesn't talk about public works is because public works does a great job.
Yeah.
They're not complaining about potholes.
Yeah.
Those things, so.
If they love their parks and streets and communities. Okay, so getting into the development side itself, and I know you all are familiar with this, you've probably been out there, but there's a few points we want you to understand. There's actually two tax lots, lot 1 and lot 2. You can see this dashed or dotted little area here. This is the containment cell. So when you go back and look at all the environmental phase 2 work, the NEPA analysis, one of the strategies and big strategy is to provide a containment cell where you cluster all that stuff up, wrap it up into some geotextile fabric. You can chemical treat it, but nonetheless, you're going to contain it in the center of the site. The darker colored area here, if you will, is what has been identified as the actual developable area of the site. So overall, you have about 27 acres, 26 and a half, but you really only are looking at being able to develop about 9 of those acres.
wow. Yeah. I really thought the back was also going to be buildable.
I do show a line here for a wetland boundary. We didn't put it on the map because it is essentially everywhere.
So that area above the containment area is wetland then, or?
Everything
Yeah,
in here
I
is
know.
pretty much a wetland. It did have a delineation that just expired, so that's something that the city will have to do, so you'll get better information or current, but you have wetlands all over the place here. Zoning wise, it's light industrial, some environmental impacts, which you're all probably well aware of. It's within floodplain wetlands, it has all this soil contamination and significant topography. The site presents itself pretty well on Oregon Street, and it falls off really heavily down into this wetland, little pondish area. Lots of opportunity there. So how do we approach this site, given you can only develop a certain percentage of it? It's, it has lots of topography on it. Well, we said, let's one, obviously, after the cleanup and it's ready for development, let's consolidate the lots, that's easy. But let's balance cut and fill. You don't want to bring a whole lot of dirt on site, you don't want it to take a whole lot away, so you want to balance that effort. The way we're looking at doing that is actually terracing the site using significant retaining walls. So these yellow squares here would represent the two relatively flat, somewhat flat areas that we would call the upper and lower yard, right? You'd have the upper yard presenting itself on Oregon Street, and then the lower taking advantage of that topography change working down the hillside. Upper yard would include the admin building, staff visitor parking, public sandbag area, and all of the required landscaping for this site. Now, the site has, 20 some plus acres of landscaping, but any of the landscaping requirements, we try to contain all of that on the upper site. All the parking is, should be a pretty relatively easy swing. The lower yard, the lower level would be your warehouse building. It's where all your fleet, large equipment parking would go, and your bulk material storage. Again, these two areas would want to be flat. This presents a 2-story office building. Opportunity to create some presence on Oregon Street. Also helps minimize the impact on the neighborhood. So all the noisy things, the things that people aren't gonna really wanna look at, we'll hide those down the hillside. You don't really get a vantage point to on the site, which I think is a huge bonus.
So about all the rest of the developable?
The north end, we would say you save that for expansion for the yard. When we show the site plan, you can extend that north. We've talked about internally, and I think in 2019, we showed this area down here being a public amenity, access to that green space. That regional stormwater facility is gonna have some development in here, so you can find access to that green space.
You're not gonna let anybody down in there?
Nature trails.
Floodplain, it is really wet down there.
Yeah, I think that there's ways to get the trail in there and do that. And again, it's just potential.
So at the beginning, we actually talked about a trail system through there, but that was just in conversation.
That would be a park city.
Not big enough for the field house. We already had that conversation.
I'll touch on that.
How much office space?
So conversation. Well, I'll get to that real quick. But for this, we want to capitalize on natural resources, and we want to tie together that Oregon stormwater project. So here's what that preliminary plan starts to look like. Office building is about 25,000 square feet. Okay, and that 25,000 square feet gives you that 20 years of projected growth. So you build everything on day one, and you grow into the building. That 24.8 change gives you that growth. The warehouse is about 27,000 square feet. Okay?
Is that projection just assuming the current departments that are there today growing?
No growth in the department, and also we look at demographic growth. So there's some studies out now that show for Sherwood housing growth from 2018 to 2038 that within city limits you're looking at a 10% growth.
Where I was going was, we have a city hall building that's running out of space as well.
We actually did talk about that.
So what you have in this facility is it's planned currently with Kristen and Tammy with some growth there. It has public works growth, and it also has some folks from community development at the engineering department listed with it.
Well, broadband.
Oh, yeah, sorry, broadband's in there too. And you actually,
Broadband as well as
what's that?
office broadband.
So you
as
have
well as
the network side as well as the construction side. So you have quite a bit of staff. And when Brandon's talking about the 24,000, I believe the police station's about 17,000. I believe this facility is about 33,000 for
So somewhere in
office. Somewhere in between that is, don't hold me to that on this building, but I think that's where this building's at, close to it.
And when you compare to other jurisdictions, that number it's an apples to apples comparison. So site summary, some of the amenities would be covered parking. Program calls for 13 spaces. These are vehicles that they want protected. Equipment storage, a decant facility, so they bring a lot of wet material to the site. You want to dry it out, so when you dump it, it weighs less, costs less. Fuel island, vehicle wash, material storage, and some chemical storage on site. A backup generator that gives you redundancy electrically for the site. Typically, we see that we can, as an emergency operations or an incident operations center, we can power the facility for about 3 days normally and get pretty good coverage throughout the whole building. Parking summary, this allows for 33 visitor spaces. The 33 visitor spaces is a little heavy. When we looked at what they expect to receive for visitors for utility billing, it ranges from a half dozen to a dozen a day, depending on time of the month. So 30 is heavy, but we also think that it could provide parking for that future site amenity if needed. But it's good to have a little extra parking. We have, for staff, about 82 spaces on the upper yard. We have some overflow on the lower. And fleet equipment, we're covering about 70, almost 70 spaces. And these range from, a full size F-350 light truck to some of their smaller equipment and backhoes. And then we are providing some indoor parking. There are certain pieces of equipment that have fluids and chemicals in them that you want to keep tempered. So those spaces would go, those pieces would go in the warehouse itself. So out of the 26 and a half acres, we're talking about really developing about 6 acres total. And that's about 65% of your developable area.
So I'd want to know how much it would cost to just grade out the final little chunk in the back at the same time.
Mayor wants to spend more money?
I'd want to know what the, just,
So then, as you're saying,
It's cheaper to do it now.
take advantage of that.
yeah,
Put a gravel lot there, parking.
I see a little dotted line for the field house.
I think we've had that conversation, Mayor, about grading that out, but we wanted to tighten it up for this meeting.
So yeah, the big question that when we first started this was, what do we do with the field house? And right out of the gate, our reaction is the two programs don't mix, right? Really, you wouldn't do that.
well, I mean, it exists because of an opportunity
Correct.
back in the day.
So we looked at that and we said, well, if this rectangular here is about the size of the field house, which includes the field and some of the spaces to support it, that's about the footprint we would give it. Now, we didn't go in and program it. We didn't give, really any square footages. We kind of said, we know what a futsal field looks like. We kind of know how much area you need around the perimeter and spaces, looking at what you have now. So that's about the footprint. And so you could see, it really doesn't fit. If you had to make this happen, and this was a directive given, you're really looking at stacking that on top of the parking and building parking below. There's really no way to get the field house out in the green space. You have to build it somewhere within that 9 acres. You start
Back up and say
stacking
what you said, say that again, stack what?
Stack the program.
Stack it on top of the parking lot.
Yeah, so since you have a lot of topography, you bury the parking and you build those soccer fields on top. To me, that'd be the only way where you separate the programs enough to where it doesn't become a security issue and you don't have it can be its own entity.
You think that's,
Even with leveling the plot and making another entryway and taking away 12 spots for parking?
I have no desire to combine the field house with public works.
What's the utilization of the field house?
I mean, it was,
pre-COVID,
It's a lot.
it's a lot.
pre-COVID.
Okay.
Craig, you wanna
Lance
you wanna
did a-
cohabitate with the field house? If you had your choice?
I think it's been challenging. And it's been challenging from the parking side. You got right now, Lance can't even start his stuff till
Right.
5 o'clock or after till we're gone because there's no parking.
I don't disagree that they're two incompatible areas. My concern though is if we don't deal with the field house question, we can't redevelop that. It makes it harder to
Can't we
develop
keep
that.
the field house, sell the rest of the property?
I don't know. I think that we just need to look at that.
Yeah.
What we'd like to convey is you don't build that here with.
I would completely agree.
Field house and the
So to
parking lot
give you
of the
kind of
Y.
a visual, just a little bit better understanding of dealing with the topography, this drawing here really shows you each one of these is a foot change in grade, so it really.
Yeah, it falls away.
Part of our effort, we did some adjacency studies, so you can see the bar for the warehouse versus the bar for the admin building, giving scale and size to the different departments and entities that are gonna be plugged into these buildings. We started showing that it does fit and how we actually see the site working. So again, on the upper level, you have staff and visitor parking, gives you a secured ramp entrance to the lower yard, good circulation around the building, the warehouse. For a rule of thumb, you want about 80 feet off of that warehouse to allow for vehicle circulation in and out. So you can see parking around the perimeter. The north end is really their material storage, decant facility. So you build out that warehouse, you stop it at a certain point, give you some site area to expand it down the line. It's a pre-engineered metal building with bays, so you can add more bays down.
And the chemical storage tanks aren't difficult to relocate.
Not difficult.
You drain them and haul them over.
Correct, all above ground, that infrastructure is pretty light. So expanding it north of the warehouse we see is doable. This other view here, you can see how you start to relate to the neighborhood. So Oregon Street,
Oh, yeah, good partner.
yeah, it doesn't really have a good, pedestrian feel to it. The sidewalk
It's a
actually.
little bit of an improvement over a tannery or a battery recycler or
There's no reason why you can't do a facility for public works that doesn't present itself well and still be able to justify the cost, be good stewards of public works. Easy.
What's the depth of that retaining wall?
12 feet to 13 feet is what we're projecting.
So with the short wall, the whole air back area would pretty much be invisible.
Yeah, and then when you have some alignment with the warehouse, that starts helping. We like this alignment between the two buildings because you get some efficiency in terms of circulation between the two buildings. What we want to see is Public Works, everybody meeting in the admin building in the morning, the operations crew deploy out to their vehicles, to the warehouse, out to the site, and do that in reverse so that everybody starts the day in one building, everybody finishes the day in one building, and you build a lot of good culture there. But you can see, really good circulation, really nice presentation to the street with some green buffering for all the parking. And again, taking advantage of these views of the green space and also being, respectful to the neighborhood. We further explored, so once we got the yard settled, we said, well, we know how much of a perimeter, we know where we want these retaining walls. So if you can imagine in your mind, the site layout applies to all 4 options. So really the options presented here is how do you site the admin building? Right? Do you have them connected so you have some efficiency with circulation? Do you have them separated and separate the parking so that you have, street presence? Do you turn your back on the street, focus on the green space, or solely focus on?
by combining it with the option A, don't you save a bunch of money with core facilities, bathrooms?
Yeah.
We don't need to double the toilets in 2 buildings.
No, the circulation between the two, again, everybody's starting one day, so the less they have to, move between
Showers.
buildings, just efficiency of circulation.
So
That makes sense.
would the first floor of the admin building be at the rear lot level?
No, it would be at the street level, right? So if you can imagine, I'm a visitor, I drive into the visitor lot, I wanna walk into the lobby, be adjacent to the reception area, be adjacent to the
I
building.
understand the lobby concept, but what I'm saying is there's 2 stories, so is there a basement under there
you
or
would take advantage of that.
to get the 2 stories, so from the street?
No, excuse me, you would build 2 stories up from street level and then have that basement level, right?
So it's really 3 stories, yeah.
Yeah, and you can control that basement level, how much program is down there. If we were to take you to Wilsonville's, you'd see that, your wet area, your server rooms, your mechanical rooms are in that basement. And the portions themselves above that.
Make sure you don't have plug drains in the server rooms.
So
Is there
what
some
does
history
this
there?
cost, right? What are we projecting for your overall project budget? And keep in mind that this project budget is based on the program. So no matter the shape of the building, the square footages are the same, so all the costs apply, right? So no matter down the line in 6 months, if you say, no, I want 2 separate buildings, I want that street presence, we're still looking at around the same project cost.
That's where we get scared.
This is where you wanna-
It is if you didn't read Craig's email.
Are roughly the same cost.
I read
At
Craig's
didn't mean
email.
to scare
this level of estimating, yes, because we are at a rough order of magnitude. Because really that site plan is all I have to.
Gotcha, And Craig, which option do you like?
I like option A because everybody's together.
Okay.
I think
And,
that was kind of the
but
consensus.
I really, it's not about what I want. It's a community asset and that's why we wanted to bring you
So
guys.
you run the facility, so you're.
Right, but I wanted to give you guys some options to look at. I also like the natural light and the natural resource part of it, but efficiency wise, I think option A is the better option.
So help me understand though, with option A though, the big long warehouse part of it is sunk down, so you still have the same kind of views
Yeah.
that you would out of that building, right?
You do.
Okay,
And in this effort, we're trying very hard not to design the building, right? We're literally just trying to carve a space for it, make sure that we have its, width and height and, its length kind of right.
okay, that's great.
Okay, so here's the rub. So total project cost, we're looking at anywhere in the realm of $25 to $26 million, plus the cost of the land, okay? So the three buckets of money that I want you to really think about is the property purchase, your construction cost, and then your soft cost, right? So if you look at the top category, property purchase cost, since we don't really know what that cost of land is gonna be, your title appraisal, your closing, that is TBD. But we do know that you're gonna need some money for things like survey, geotech, environmental investigation and assessment. Even though you've done the phase 2, we're still gonna want some money for just different explorations that will come up. And then AE due diligence, so some homework, some money for our homework on our side.
So question, so, and maybe I was misinformed, but my understanding is we could get the land for free as long as we take on the cleanup.
I don't.
So I wasn't a part of those conversations at the beginning, and my understanding is there's been some change at the county, and they're talking about putting some stuff up for auctions and stuff. So we actually what we need to do is I laid out in the email what we need to do. We need to get a prospective purchase agreement with DEQ before we even really start to have a conversation about buying the property. We can actually have the conversation, but you need to have that agreement before we actually purchase the property, if it's for $1 or whatever it is. I have not had the conversation with the county. Julia's been working on this, or she has in the past. So I don't know any agreements. I know it was cheap, but we also had some different changes of their property management.
My understanding is they had some rules around maybe ordinance, I don't know what it is, but they have to make it available for public.
We'll sort it out.
So we'll get that part sorted out, and that's what I put in the email, some, there's no cost in here for Oregon Street improvements. The stormwater quality facility that's gonna be built with the actual Oregon Street improvement project, road projects, those costs it's not included in here, just so you know that. My deal is I wanna make sure that you guys see the soft cost, the risk mitigation cost, as well as the construction cost estimates that we have right now. And then Brandon mentioned a couple other of the cost, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to bring any surprises back to you. And this is all pending of a November 23 construction. We know we're not going to be there, but I want you to know that it's just not, I said 18 to $22 million a few months ago, or the last year when we started working on this, and we're at 19 and a half. So I think we're still in that ballpark. But this is no different than we did the water project. I want everything laid out. That was like $40 to $44 million, and it come in at 36, 37. I think there's some real risk here that we need to make sure that we're capturing enough contingency this early in the project. Yeah. That's $3.5 million, 3.7. So I just want to make sure we have that going into it's Brownsfield project. That number last we heard was about $3.5 million for the cleanup. I know the mayor's been back in DC. I laid out a couple different things with EPA grants, as well as Oregon business grant, stuff that we can actually be looking at that we need to start looking at. And there'll be some costs associated with all that stuff too.
When I see that number, just the urgency just goes higher for me with construction costs, inflation, and I mean, every 7% inflation on construction costs, that's $145,000 a month.
Yeah, we're projecting about $1 million of inflation if you start construction of every 2023.
So so if you just.
That's already in this estimate?
That is correct, yeah. And that's a pretty conservative estimate. If you look, and I'll walk you through these numbers, but for the office building, we're assuming it's a concrete tilt structure. Those average $300 to $400 a square foot. Since this would be most likely viewed as an essential facility, you're gonna be on the higher end of that. So the office is about 9.5. Fleet maintenance, so the shop spaces in the warehouse carry a little higher price per square foot. You can see that in fleet shop. And then the rest of the storage drops significantly in cost. We've given some allocations for each of the site amenities, and then a 2.4 number for development of the site itself. You don't really have any demolition costs because it's an existing building. And we are suggesting, due to market conditions, the fact that it is a brownfield site, you want to get your project team established early, which you want to bring the contractor on board. So we would project about an $80,000 line for them for pre-construction services. A lot of times there's a discount on that if they actually get to build the building, but we say plan about 80. Add all your taxes, your green energy, some estimated contingency, plus your escalation, and that gets you to the 19.5. In our industry, that is your construction cost. Typically, just right out of the gate, we add 30% to that to get to your soft cost. which right now we're predicting, about 4.5 million, and that's just slightly under the 30%, so I think it's good numbers. So if you add all that up, you're at about $24 million. We suggest adding a risk mitigation. We saw Wilsonville do this. We see Tiger doing that right now. 15%, add another 1.6 to it, and that gets you to 25.7. Now it's heavy, it's conservative, but we do have some really good market checks right now. Like I said, we completed Oregon City at the end of last year. It's not a direct apples to apples comparison, so we pulled this off. Their construction cost was 10.2 million, but they were at about a 4.5 acre site. They didn't have the sign amenities. It was an existing building that they renovated, so not quite apples to
And
apples.
they didn't finish everything, didn't get everything they wanted, right?
Well, they didn't renovate every building, every portion of the building. So we left some of the warehouse as is and just were very limited with some improvements. But Wilsonville, we think, is a perfect apples to apples. Like I mentioned, we are bidding that right now. So we have 3 approved pre-qualified contractors. I'll have their bids on the 24th, I believe. So they will kind of get a really good market check. I mean, it'll be the best thing on the market that we have. They're projected to come in at about 19 million. Their development site is about 9 acres, and they don't have the fuel station, but it's a close apples to apples comparison.
Is it really 2 million for engineering for a tilt-up building?
Where do you see that?
Architectural engineering, $2 million.
Yeah.
That just seems, I mean, it's not like it's a custom building, it's just,
Oh, it is.
but it's tilt-up, it's pretty standard construction.
That's about average. 10% is what you want to plan for. That takes you all the way from, your SD all the way through CA delivering of the building. And that's about what the market's trading now, 10%.
I know it's what the market's doing. I just think it's outrageous.
Terrific.
Yeah, I mean,
So
that's 3.
I know it's your bread and butter, such a big, but
I know we're out of time, aren't we? For this,
we're doing all right.
okay. Well, so how, and I know there's separate projects, but how much of this do we recover by developing the existing place?
Depends if you keep the field house or not.
We haven't even,
So that's a,
haven't looked into that one.
that's another.
Whole other
Yeah.
Okay.
We
No,
still
I
need
just-
to get it.
Makes it easier to swallow that number if you say, oh, and we get 20 million back by developing this other
How
one.
many acres is the existing public works?
A little over 3, I think, is what it is.
And to help you understand these costs, and the reason why we default to the concrete tilt, right now we have a few projects that are in the late CD phase, and those estimates for like a type 2 building, a steel building, those are coming in at about the $900 square foot range. Some of those projects about a year ago were projected to be in the 600 range, and they're trading a lot higher.
It is.
So the market right now is really, has the potential to kill a lot of projects, but what we're seeing in the public sector, it's just kind of a revisioning of some of that projects. And a lot of time, the money's coming across the line one way or another, particularly with the public works facilities. With what we've done with COVID, last year we had forest fires, ice storms. The Oregon City project that we completed, was built through all of that. It just reiterated the need that the community needs.
They're still spread out, so they don't have all their staff. They have their staff there, but they still have different locations for material and stuff. So when you're saying it's not apples to apples, you are 100%.
Yeah, their site's a lot smaller, so they still have satellite facilities and then satellite.
And we'll get the Energy Trust in and then tell us what they can do to help. And
Yeah,
all
so
that.
we've already had conversations with them, and when we move to the next phase, if the council wants to move forward to the 30% drawing, we'll have Energy Trust as well as the PGE will be a part of that team too from the electrical side.
And I will say they're dollars that you'll get, but they're not, significant from what I would say. But they do.
As a reminder, we have a line item in the new urban renewal district for this, and that's the tune of 10 million,
A little over 10.
a little over 10. And then I mentioned to Keith earlier, but and not for today, but maybe we'll follow up. I mean, I want to basically give you the, say if I was to vote on it, I want to continue to move forward. But love to know if we, we put 12 million in urban renewal into the project. Great. Now we have 12 to finance somehow. What does that look like in a 30 or 40-year note? And what, how does sewer pay, what portion of the building is eligible somehow for, to get paid for by services? So no, we don't have to talk about today, but just to know that element of it.
Yeah, so just real quick on that, from the utility side, as we've been working through rates and the SDCs for the future, we have programmed this facility into that. It's a little bit lower of a cost than what we see right now, but it was still between the 18 and 22 number. So
In the SDC calculation?
so it's in there. So that has.
You don't, and we can't, how much of that is SDC eligible?
I don't have that number.
Okay,
but Deb, when she was doing the work, we had her put that in there,
Good.
The percentage of that, as well as how we broke that down.
So there's some that's SDC eligible, and we put some sort of overhead number into facilities as well. I'm just thinking of all the different
I think it's,
flows of cash, because ideally, you can decide if you want to sell it to the community and ask the folks to tax themselves, or do you first crunch the numbers to see if we can swing it, with operations? And
I was gonna say, let's talk to the people on the bond oversight committee at the school there, because they came up with all sorts of buckets to find money from, and you mentioned a couple of PGE gave us $1 million for something or other, and efficient heating and all, so, yeah.
So yeah, actually a little bit of that, maybe it's in part of the email, but
I didn't go into too much into the financing side. I think that's another conversation. But what I would like to do is wrap this feasibility study up, put some final numbers in there once we get the cost in from Wilsonville, so we have accurate numbers. And then starting in the next budget year, have that conversation and start moving towards the 30%, start to get a PPA together, the DEQ, meet with the county, start working a plan out with the new people there for purchasing the property, however that's going to be. So we understand that, as well as the Brownsfield side. And that's a little bit in the email. I didn't go into costs and stuff of that, or the time frame, but then it'd be nice to continue the Oregon Street project. So this all kind of aligns, as well as maybe we might have to build the water quality facility there on the Oregon Street project a little sooner than the actual project to make this all work, and the land use, as well as for the surveying and everything that needs to be done with that. And that's in the email that I sent today a little bit, just not a timeline on that, but more than happy to put a timeline together for you on that too.
great.
Any other questions for Brandon?
A lot of-
Say, if anyone's interested in looking at, Oregon City or Wilsonville, you're more than willing to take you or share that with you. Sorry, Kim.
Oh, I was just gonna say, there's been a lot of work put into this with, like, even before Craig said, before I joined the meetings, a lot before that, but it was interesting sitting in the meetings and having all your, I guess, are they your leads, all that? are
Yeah,
in
so
there?
we had the supervisors
Yeah.
from each section, as well as our emergency management coordinator, as well as somebody from the billing side, for more of the setting that up for more of the outreach as we move forwards, why we had her there. And so yeah, there was a team that was put together for the every 2 weeks meeting. There was a smaller group that worked on the details.
But they were all providing input about, I remember the one about the fuel station, can we move it here so trucks go on both sides? I mean, just lots of really good input as the people who use those stations every day.
Just a little bit to get it out. They might.
They're a quiet group.
So you've got a lot of input in this facility. This wasn't just one or two people doing it, so.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Brandon.
Sorry, we ran over a little bit.
You're all good.
It's all right.
Finally got to talk about it since 2005.
In 2005, were we thinking maybe of the tanneries, or were we just talking about,
No,
oh, well, it goes back to then, okay,
back in
Wow.
Rice's day.
Yeah, it's always been the plan.
wow.
So next is city attorney.
So, Mr. Mayor, I do want to introduce Alan Rafferty, who is online right now.
So can we, who's controlling the?
Oh, I think now.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And
Click on Sean. Will that bring up the whole
Brad,
Zoom?
Here comes Brad to save the day.
There he is. Well, kind of.
all right. Alan, welcome. So Alan is gonna be our acting city attorney when Josh is on vacation end of the month.
Okay.
Alan, want to introduce yourself for a couple minutes?
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much, and I appreciate opportunity to be here. And I've known Josh for quite a while, so I appreciate him calling me, and I'm looking forward to working with the city of Sherwood. I've worked with you guys in the past. I was the county council of Washington County for the last 10 years, and I've just retired last July, and I sort of started picking up a little side work here and there. And so I've also served as the city attorney at the city of Beaverton for 8 years. So I know my cities pretty well. And I also was Crook County council over in Central Oregon, and the Prineville City Planning Director and the Crook County Planning Director too. So I have some good expertise in land use. And again, I said I've been doing government law for 30 years, most of it right here in Washington County. And so I'm looking forward to working with you. And so they invited me here tonight to introduce myself. I met the city managers on Friday, and I met your council president and your mayor, and of course the city managers. So again, I'm looking forward to working for you, and feel free to call me if you have any questions when Josh is on vacation.
Awesome. Thank you, Alan. Appreciate your availability and your willingness to step in while he's on that break. And then after you came on board, Josh turned around and got another job. So we're going to talk about a bit about next steps there. But in all likelihood, we'll have to look at calendars, but we'll chat about the prospect of you acting as interim after Josh's last day if we don't have somebody on board by then.
Sounds interesting. I'd be happy to sit down and chat with you about that.
Awesome. Thank you, Alan. Anybody got questions for Alan?
Nope. Thanks for stepping in.
Thank you.
Okay, so I was going to sign off because I don't want to end.
Sounds good, Alan.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
So we need to take steps to work to find a new city attorney. So
Is it a foregone conclusion that we will do an in-house attorney versus what we were at before?
that's not a foregone conclusion.
Okay.
I am of the opinion that that's what we should do.
Me too.
But
Is there a reason why? I'm totally neutral on this.
quite all right. So historically, we've alternated. So we had we had a outside counsel for many years. When I first got on to the planning commission, we had a gentleman that had a private personal practice. All he did was government. He worked for a couple of cities. Then certainly not long after I became an elected, we went to a firm, Barry Elsner Hammond, because they had multiple lawyers with specialties and they could really do a good job. And we even had one of their attorneys to have their office in our building for many of the days, and that worked well at the time. And then I got out of office end of 12, I think in 15 or 15. In 15, city council explored the idea of hiring in-house, and they hired Josh.
Okay.
I was skeptical after I got back into office, but Josh won me over. So I'm of the opinion that it's valuable just because he's the point person all the time for staff to be able to turn to, always on the clock, but at a good, the employee rate versus contractor rate.
Okay.
And that attorney is still working with other attorneys to address specific needs if there's stuff that goes beyond our attorney's expertise or beyond their capacity to do the stuff. So it's very good, I believe, for employees internally to have somebody to always be able to turn to.
Keith, is it your opinion that the what?
I will recuse myself from this whole process, actually.
Oh.
Here, this is.
So the city attorney is an employee of the city council.
I know. Well, so the question I was going to ask though was, and maybe this is something for me to go around and ask all of the people that report to you, because I'm interested in their feedback as to whether having somebody in the office next to them is materially better than having
a firm
that, you know what I mean? Like I don't know. I have somebody I call at my office that's dedicated to my legal needs, but those are the kinds of things I'd want to see for the who I would consider his users, which would be us plus all of your employees. And so maybe I'll just.
I think, and for me, I see the value in the in-house as well. I think it's also, there's a reason that the attorney reports to counsel, because it's also a check and balance in terms of how we're set up. So, and my experience has been there is quite a lot of work, and it's not just staff coming to the attorney. We have, as most people know, people like to sue government agencies. So there's a long list that we're always dealing with, and I think we would pay a lot more if we tried to outsource that.
No, and the only thing that concern though of that there's a lot to be done is there, and maybe I just don't know the candidates that are available, but is there somebody who has all of that legal knowledge? Because there's
nobody has all that legal knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
But you need a clearinghouse.
Point person. Okay.
To organize it.
All right. Yeah, I just.
Josh didn't, when Josh was hired, he didn't know anything.
He was trained.
And he's leaving and he still doesn't know everything.
Yeah, no, I know. And it's knowing even just government law versus, law enforcement law, right? I mean, it feels like that
There's land use.
Yeah, there's full careers on all of those things. And so I was thinking maybe
we can, further explore or take as much time in theory as we want.
Well, frankly, I think it would be the individuals, right? If we got people who were rock stars and could communicate and engage with city employees and the police department, you know what I mean? If we had the right personality mix, I'd be all for that guy being the point person.
Or gal.
Right? Or yeah,
Person.
as a generic term, yes. So person.
Yeah.
But
anyway, but the role is in my mind, just to be clear, it's about there is a heavy component that person takes on themselves. We also have an intern program where we're bringing in interns out, but it's also coordinating the specialty needs that we have. Land use is an area, police is an area. There's different areas where you have to have that deep domain knowledge, but you still need that person that's coordinating for.
There's one person that knows all the legal stuff that's going on, not a firm where this land use, but this one's doing this for us and they have no idea who holds all that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I see that as a huge value. So I'm looking forward to the process.
But correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know, last time when we had BEH, who from council could communicate with them? Because I don't think the whole council was allowed to. So like I call Josh whenever I have a question. Today I emailed him about something.
Yeah, it was the thing with
So we may
Barry
not have that
Elsner.
access.
It was a thing just because every time that you talk to Barry Elsner was our point person. And so when he picked up the phone, you called Barry. Or not Pam Barry, Paul Elsner. When he called Paul, the clock.
One of the advantages for council is, especially when we are striving to be creative and innovative in an approach to things, I'm constantly bouncing crazy ideas, and occasionally they stick and occasionally they don't. But if we have to outsource that.
If everything's getting built, then people aren't gonna be afraid, like whether it's staff or us, there's a barrier now to reach out. I know if I reach out, it's gonna cost $200.
And I actually
or
met with
$500 or
Josh the other day and asked him what he thought pros and cons. And, he says there's pros and cons to both, but one of the cons would be that exact thing. Staff is more hesitant to reach out because they know that's going to be billed for $400 for that 30 minutes or whatever, but that's.
I would be in favor of trying to hire internally, and then if we can't find a candidate we like, we can always revisit it.
And Sean, do you agree, idea of trying to replace Josh with another in-house attorney?
Yeah, so I can't speak for experience with the firm because Josh has always been here since I've been on council, but I can speak to the positive traits that having an in-house attorney does bring, for exactly the reasons that have been stated here and more, actually. Yeah, I've reached out to Josh on questions. He's responsive within a day. We would hope that somebody else would do the same. Somebody who can explain to me, a non-lawyer, somebody who didn't take any legal classes in college, he can, I need somebody who can explain it in a way that explains the risk and makes sense of it. But also, I think, one of the things that Josh, had he had more time, that he was starting to do a little bit, I don't know if you guys remember his little quarterly kind of updates that he was providing that gave us some forward-looking kind of things as well and helped us understand tort law and things like that. I don't think we're going to get that from a firm, where we wouldn't get that extra. We would only get all that we ask for and no more. So I'd rather have somebody who really has our best interest at heart. So, yep.
So
that was a long way of me saying yes.
So if everyone's agreeable, after today, I'll reach out to Josh and well, Friday, Josh, Keith, Tim and I will talk, but reach out to get some quotes from recruiting firms and see how fast we can get those for us to review and hopefully at the next normally scheduled city council meeting.
Awesome. Can't just post it on Craigslist. All right.
Indeed, these days, indeed.
We've got a lot of legal experts on social media. Perhaps we could just grab somebody from there real quick.
Community group.
There you go.
Yep.
All right, awesome. Any objection to that? All right, so we're hitting up against the hour, so we're adjourned.
Zero.
Nice.